चालू करा जाए सर, मेरे हिसाब से फिर लोग ज्वाइन करते रहेंगे. Why we should wait?
Sure, sir.
अंकुर जी.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We should start now.
हाँ.
I see Ankur Tayal on behalf of Team Gyan Ki Baat. Welcome to all the participants, all the panelists. Today's session speaker CM Mohit Gupta ji, keynote speaker Manoj Goyal ji, moderator Ashutosh Garg ji, Dr. Amit Tiwari ji, Gyanchand Mishra ji, and all the participants. I welcome from the core of my heart on behalf of Team Gyan Ki Baat. Today's topic is the very important topic, and it is a demand of the time that we should discuss on the same. That is a recent amendment in GST. GST में हमेशा ही काफी टाइम से recently changes होते रहते हैं, but अभी काफी इसमें important changes हैं which we must be aware, and the GST expert Mohit Gupta ji and also Manoj Goyal ji is with us as a keynote speaker. So without taking much time, first of all, I request CA Gyanchand Mishra ji to give the welcome address and address the gatherings. Gyanchand Mishra ji.
So much. Thank you, Ankur Tayal ji. Very respected both the speakers of the session, CA Manoj Kumar Goyal ji, CA Mohit Gupta ji, moderators CA Ashutosh Garg ji, CA Dr. Amit Tiwari ji, CA Punesh Sakuja ji, and of course all the respected participants. Good evening to one and all. Friends, we all know that the time is of filing the income tax return. Date is changing very soon, 31st of October. But there were demand of various members that some recent developments with respect to the GST amendments should be discussed. So this is a brief and very short notice webinar for the members who were interested to discuss about the GST changes that has been done today. So the two learned speakers, CA Manoj Goyal ji is with us and CA Mohit Gupta ji, and I'm sure that the deliberation of both will certainly benefit the knowledge bank of the members, and they shall be able to deliver better in the GST arena. Friends, I'll not take much time as our X factor is that we always try to start in time. So I want that the program should be started immediately. So Ankurji, request you to kindly start the program. Just one request to the members: keep in connect to Team Gyan Ki Baat. We keep on having more and more programs on the benefit oriented of the members topic. So keep connected, subscribe the channel, and keep yourself updated. The profession needs more knowledge, and being the knowledge-based profession, we have to update ourselves not only time to time but on routine basis. So thank you, Ankurji, for this opportunity. We'll request you to kindly start the program.
Thank you, Gyanji, for your word. Now I request CA Manoj Kumar Goyal ji for his keynote address. Manoj Kumar Goyal ji.
Thank you, Ankurji. Thank you very much, Honorable GC Mishra ji, Dr. Amit Tiwari ji, my co-speaker Mohit Gupta ji, and moderator of the session Ashutosh Garg ji, and all the participants. So at the outset, my sincere thanks to the entire management committee of Gyan Ki Baat, who has given me this opportunity of being here today once again, and say a few words on the recent changes and developments in the field of GST. So as it has been decided that the detailed session will be taken by Mohit Gupta ji, and my role is only restricted to can you talk about the effectiveness or what kind of changes have been brought into in the recent days as far as GST is concerned. So to begin with, I will only talk about a few contentious but most important issues which have been at the backbone of all the recent GST meetings the Council of the GST had in the recent past, and also some most contentious issues which have been there ever since the GST was implemented. So to begin with, I'll talk about one of the most hot topics which has been discussed in the past 2-3 years very, very frequently at various seminars, and also many of the big clients were receiving notices from GST department on the same issue, which has been put to rest now with this 52nd GST Council meeting, in which they've decided to bury down the matter. So the matter concerns about the directors' guarantees given on behalf of the companies or their businesses per se. So there was a big challenge that the GST authorities were taking a view that if a director of a company gives any guarantee on behalf of the company, then it is to be considered as a supply, even if there is no consideration flowing in from the company to the director. So being a Schedule 1 item transaction of a related party, they were claiming that this transaction is taxable, and under reverse charge mechanism, the company concerned will have to pay GST on that. And similar was the position when there was a corporate guarantee given by one company to another, even if there was no consideration flowing in from one person to another. So in the 52nd meeting, they have come out with the proposition that in both the cases, as long as there is no consideration involved in the transaction, then the taxability will not rise, even if it is a guarantee given by a director of the company on behalf of the company, or one company, which is a group company, maybe a subsidiary holding relationship, or otherwise a related company to another, giving any corporate guarantee. Both these transactions will not be subject to GST unless there is actual consideration flowing in from one person to another. So as long as these transactions are undertaken without any actual consideration flowing in, these will not be taxable anymore. And likewise, the same situation arises in case of intercorporate guarantees. But on the other side, they've said that where there is such a transaction taking place with the consideration flowing in from one person to another, then it will be a taxable transaction. And suitable change in the valuation rule number 28 has also been made, which says that there will be a 1% notional value of the amount of guarantee, which will be considered as value, or the actual consideration if it is higher than 1%. So whichever is higher, if 1% of the guarantee value is higher, then it will be taken as the value on which GST will be paid, or the actual consideration, if it is more than 1% of the guarantee value, then it will be taxed. So this is one point that I wanted to clarify, because there were so many notices being received by all big and small companies around this director's guarantee thing. So that matter has been put to rest now. Another important thing is that there were so many cases where you've been getting regular notices. Sorry. So there have been so many regular notices that various companies have been receiving, or various individuals even have been receiving, for attachment of their properties. So Section 83 of the GST Act provides for attachment of properties in case there are some dues on account of GST which is not being recovered. Then the commissioner has the power to issue an order attaching a particular property. So we've seen in the past that many of such orders were passed, but even after completion of 1 year, which is the period given in the law itself, the properties were being detached. So now they have proposed to bring in a new change, which will provide in the law itself that there will be an automatic release of the properties which have been attached for a period of more than 1 year, and nothing or no order of any sort has been passed. Then such attachment will be vacated automatically. So the provision will be coming in the law itself. Another important change that I would like to talk about is the amnesty scheme, which they have proposed in the 52nd meeting for all those who have missed the bus of filing an appeal against an appealable order. So now they have proposed that all those who've not been able to file any appeals against any orders or against which they were aggrieved, and for whatever reasons they were not able to file within the stipulated timelines, any aggrieved party can go ahead and file an appeal against any order which was passed prior to 31st March 2023, and the deadline they are proposing is 31st January 2024. So anyone who has missed the opportunity of filing an appeal, or even if an appeal was filed but it was delayed and the appeal has been rejected on the ground that the appeal was filed later than what it was supposed to be, then in both the situations, now they are coming up with the amnesty scheme, proposing that you will be able to file the appeal, provided that a little bit more than what is provided in the law in terms of pre-deposit has to be deposited now. So the provision says that rather than 10% of the disputed tax amount, you will have to now deposit 12.5%, out of which 2.5% will have to be in cash. So that is the precondition for filing a delayed appeal under this amnesty scheme, that a pre-deposit amount will be higher than the normal amount provided in the law. So likewise, there are so many changes in terms of the rates in GST goods related changes, and then the rates on services as well, and so many other provisions. But since the topic of the day has to be taken up by Mohitji, and I'm sure he would be packed with all this information for us, so not at the cost of being repetitious, I think a few changes that I thought of bringing on the board to just kickstart the discussion. So I've shared with all of you. And now I would like to hand over the mic to the moderator of the session to take the proceedings forward.
Ashutosh, now you can please get started the technical session, please. Thank you,
Thank you
Manoj,
so much,
for
sir.
your deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you, Manoj sir. Very knowledgeable deliberation given by you. I am taking two value additions, and my part, the one is the uh, how the value computations of the guarantee provided by the directors and promoters to the company, and the other one is the seizing of the property. And first of all, I would like to thank Team Gyan Ki Baat, our pride, CA Gyanchandra Mishra sir, and CA Ankur Tayal sir, CA Dr. Amit Tiwari sir, Puneet Sakuja sir, for giving me the opportunity for moderating the session. And I would like to welcome our keynote speaker Manoj Kumar Goyal sir, and our guest speaker CA Mohit Gupta sir for the sessions. Without wasting any of time, I will like to handing over the mic to Mohit Gupta sir to start the session, as the participant is waiting for hearing from you, sir.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh bhai. So first of all, I would like to thank GST Mishra sir and team Gyan Ki Baat and Puneet Sakuja ji for this wonderful opportunity. And like we also follow Manoj Goyal ji for GST related updates. So it is a great pleasure that I am sharing today's program with Manoj ji. And a special thanks to Ankur ji, Amit ji, and Ashutosh ji. So friends, today we are going to discuss about the changes which have been made applicable recently in GST, and more specifically जो 1st October 2023 से applicable हुए हैं. So mostly जो changes applicable हुए हैं, so first major changes Finance Act 2023, which was notified in March itself, but जितने भी उसमें GST related changes हैं, those changes have been notified with effect from 1st October 2023. उसके अलावा एक बहुत ही मेजर चेंज जो गवर्नमेंट जीएसटी काउंसिल मीटिंग हुई थी, 50th जीएसटी काउंसिल मीटिंग में उन्होंने कसिनोज, ऑनलाइन मनी गेमिंग, ऑनलाइन गेमिंग, कसिनोज, इन सब की टैक्सेबिलिटी के ऊपर डिसीजन हुआ था. एंड बहुत ही स्पीड से, आई वुड से वन ऑफ द फास्टेस्ट अमेंडमेंट्स आई हैव सीन इन जीएसटी लॉ. तो जीएसटी काउंसिल मीटिंग होते ही तुरंत सीजीएसटी अमेंडमेंट एक्ट, आईजीएसटी अमेंडमेंट एक्ट लाया गया अगस्त 2023 में. एंड नाउ दे हैव नोटिफाइड दैट एक्ट to be applicable with effect from 1st October 2023. So that is that is also a very important amendment which we will be discussing today. And then last but not the least, all the changes which have been proposed in 52nd GST Council meeting. So that also we will discuss. So I'll just share my screen with all of you. So I hope my screen is visible to everyone.
Yes, sir, it is visible. You may continue.
Thank you. And I would request all the participants to make this a very interactive session, क्योंकि one way session में कभी भी मजा नहीं आता. तो टाइम टू टाइम मैं क्वेश्चन पूछते रहूंगा, तो चैट बॉक्स में आप येस नो वाले क्वेश्चन का तो आप चैट बॉक्स में आंसर दे सकते हैं. एंड कोई भी ऑडियंस के स्पेसिफिक क्वेश्चन है तो प्लीज क्वेश्चन आंसर टैब में यू कैन आस्क द क्वेश्चंस, एंड जैसे जैसे टाइम मिलता रहेगा बीच में वी विल ट्राई टू एड्रेस दोज क्वेश्चंस एज वेल. So with this, let us start our session for the day. So we are going to cover all the amendments, but जो amendments थोड़ा कम important है उसमें हम थोड़ा कम time use करेंगे, and amendments which are more important we will take more time to explain those amendments. So first amendment in CGST Act is regarding composition scheme. तो composition scheme चाहे सप्लायर ऑफ हम गुड्स की बात करें चाहे सप्लायर ऑफ सर्विसेज की बात करें, पहले तो खाली गुड्स सप्लायर ऑफ गुड्स के लिए कॉम्पोजिशन एप्लीकेबल होती थी, बट लेटर ऑन गवर्नमेंट ने फॉर सप्लाई ऑफ सर्विसेज के लिए भी कॉम्पोजिशन स्कीम अलाउ कर दी थी. बट फॉर बोथ द केसेस सप्लायर ऑफ गुड्स और सर्विसेज, कॉम्पोजिशन सप्लायर वाज नॉट अलाउड टू सप्लाई गुड्स और सर्विसेज थ्रू ई कॉमर्स प्लेटफॉर्म. तो अगर कोई भी ई कॉमर्स प्लेटफॉर्म लाइक Amazon, फ्लिपकार्ट और एनी अदर ई कॉमर्स ऑपरेटर के थ्रू किसी भी पर्सन को सप्लाई करनी होती थी, तो दैट पर्सन हैड टू टेक नॉर्मल रजिस्ट्रेशन एंड पे जीएसटी एट नॉर्मल रेट्स, क्योंकि 5, 12, 18, 28 व्हाटएवर द रेट इज एप्लीकेबल. But now the government has given a relief that the composition dealer in case of goods, so not for services, only composition dealers in case of supply of goods, they can supply it through e-commerce operator also. So this change has been made in section 10 of CGST Act. But there are some restrictions on this. So first restriction is that composition dealer who is supplying goods through e-commerce operator, he cannot supply any goods on interstate basis. So otherwise भी अगर आप देखेंगे composition dealer को interstate supply करना allowed ही नहीं. So through e-commerce operator also that supplier cannot make any interstate supply of goods. Then the e-commerce operator, because when goods are supplied through e-commerce operator, that e-commerce operator is liable to collect TCS under section 52. So that provision is going to remain there, that that e-commerce operator is liable to collect TCS. But then the quantum also has to be seen, because in composition the rate of tax is 1% and rate of TCS is also 1%. So whenever any person, supplier of goods, is now going to make the supply, so he's liable to pay 1% GST on those goods under composition scheme, and that complete 1% amount is going to be deducted by the e-commerce operator as TCS. So how it will affect the working capital of that supplier, that has to be seen. And then the e-commerce operator has to file his return in GSTR rate, which is a normal compliance. So they have mentioned it separately in a notification, but कोई need नहीं थी. So normal compliance जो e-commerce operator को follow करनी होती है, वो that e-commerce operator will follow. And once again, to clarify, in case the composition dealer wants to supply services, then for that e-commerce portal ke through that is not allowed. So that person has to take a normal registration if he wants to provide services. Now government has given one more relief to the small taxpayers who are giving goods or services, goods, not services, through e-commerce operator. So पहले, as per section 24, if any person was supplying goods through e-commerce operator, he has to take mandatory registration. अगर किसी का 10 rupees की भी supply हुई, 100 rupees की भी supply हुई, then also that person has to take registration if he was supplying goods through e-commerce operator. Now government has given a relief that in some specific case, that supplier is not required to take registration. अब वो specific case या specific conditions क्या हैं? First condition is, again, no interstate supply of goods is allowed. Makes sense. With normal case maybe, if you see section 24, normal supplier of goods is also not allowed to make interstate supply of goods. If someone is making interstate supply of goods, mandatory registration आ जाता है. So same is applicable to e-commerce operator. Then next condition is aggregate turnover in current financial year as well as previous financial year is less than the threshold limit. So 40 lakhs या 20 lakhs या 10 lakhs depending on the state that person is, उससे नीचे turnover होना चाहिए, क्योंकि उससे ऊपर turnover हुआ, then that person becomes liable under section 22 itself. Then now this is a very important condition, that such person should not make supply in more than one state. So let's say that person is located in Delhi. So वो person दिल्ली के अलावा और किसी स्टेट में बिजनेस नहीं कर सकता. तो व्हाट डज इट मीन? इंटरस्टेट सप्लाई तो अलाउड ही नहीं है, वो दिल्ली से यूपी तो गुड्स भेज ही नहीं सकता, वो तो पहली कंडीशन में भी कवर हो गया. बट पहले कई लोगों का बिजनेस होता है दैट दे ओपन मल्टीपल वेयर हाउसेज इन मल्टीपल स्टेट्स, कि दिल्ली में उन्होंने एक अलग बिजनेस ओपन कर लिया, यूपी में दे ओपन अ सेपरेट वेयर हाउस, हरियाणा में दे ओपन अ सेपरेट वेयर हाउस. So if any person has warehouses or businesses in multiple states, then also that person is not exempt from registration if that person is supplying goods to e-commerce operator. And then there are some procedural requirements that the supplier has to declare his PAN, his place of business to on the GST portal. There is a special option now made available on GST portal where that person can go and get an enrollment number. तो वहां पे वो पर्सन जाएगा, अपना पैन नंबर डालेगा, प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस डालेगा, एंड दैट पर्सन विल गेट एन एनरोलमेंट नंबर. नाउ व्हेन दैट पर्सन गेट्स रजिस्टर्ड विद द ई-कॉमर्स ऑपरेटर, so he will give his enrollment number to the e-commerce operator. And now next question आते हैं कि अगर अब अगर वो पर्सन रजिस्ट्रेशन के लिए लायबल था, तब भी उसने रजिस्ट्रेशन नहीं लिया, ई-कॉमर्स ऑपरेटर की क्या लायबिलिटी होगी? तो ये सब वी आर गोइंग टू कवर लेटर, बिकॉज those amendments are also being made in section 122 of CGST Act. But friends, my question is, practically अगर हम बात करें, हम सभी लोग ऑनलाइन शॉपिंग करते हैं आज के डेट में, Amazon, Flipkart और बहुत सी साइट से, एंड कभी भी आप टैक्स इनवॉइस देखेंगे उठा के जहां से आपको गुड्स आए हैं, हमेशा बाहर के स्टेट से होते हैं. Some goods might have come from Bangalore, from Haryana, from Kerala, from any other state. So in e-commerce business, it is very common for businesses to sell goods to another state. So ऐसे केस में अगर गवर्नमेंट एक रिलीफ दिया है that small businesses are not required to take registration, but only in those cases when interstate supply of goods is not allowed. So effectively ये benefit कितने लोगों को मिलेगा, that remains to be seen. क्योंकि ई-कॉमर्स ऑपरेटर में एट वेरी इनिशियल लेवल द बिजनेसेस स्टार्ट सेलिंग गुड्स टू पीपल हु आर आउटसाइड देयर स्टेट, एंड स्पेशली अगर हम बहुत ही छोटे स्टेट्स की बात करें, दिल्ली है, पंजाब है, तो वहां तो कोई भी पर्सन न्यू बिजनेस स्टार्ट करता है, इमीडिएटली दे गेट द ऑर्डर फॉर आउटसाइड स्टेट ओनली. इफ यू टॉक अबाउट यूपी, महाराष्ट्र, दे आर बिग स्टेट्स, बट फॉर अ स्मॉल स्टेट डीलर हु वांट टू सेल गुड्स आउटसाइड देयर स्टेट, दिस प्रोविजन विल not give them any relief. So let's hope that government gives some more thought to this, and maybe in future this schemes becomes more relaxed and cover a lot of persons. But for now, this is the provision. Now, next change has been made in section 16 subsection 2 of CGST Act. So क्या change हुआ है? So proviso to section 16 subsection 2 says that if a recipient of goods or services does not make payment to supplier within 180 days, then ITC reverse करना है. So day one से provision है, everyone is aware. But the language of this proviso used to be that the amount of ITC will be added to the output tax liability of the supplier along with interest. बट अभी हम बात करते हैं आईटीसी रिवर्सल की, सो आउटपुट टैक्स लायबिलिटी में ऐड क्यों होना चाहिए? सो अर्लियर दिस लैंग्वेज, बिकॉज पहले हमारा एक पूरा मैकेनिज्म अलग था, जीएसटीआर 1, जीएसटीआर 2, जीएसटीआर 3, सेक्शन 41, 42, 43, एक पूरा डिफरेंट स्कीम ऑफ रिटर्न फाइलिंग जीएसटी लॉ में एनविसाज हुई थी. एंड उसके अंदर जो रिटर्न का फ्लो था वो इस तरीके से था कि कोई भी आपकी लाइबिलिटी है, चाहे आईटीसी रिवर्सल की चाहे आउटपुट की, वो सब आउटपुट लाइबिलिटी में ऐड होगी. बट एज वी ऑल नो, जीएसटीआर 203 कभी ऑपरेशनल नहीं हुआ, एंड अब उन्होंने उसको लॉ से भी प्रॉपरली हटा दिया है. अब हमारा नॉर्मल सिस्टम जीएसटीआर 1, जीएसटीआर 2B, जीएसटीआर 3B का फाइनल हो गया है. तो नाउ दे हैव आल्सो मेड अमेंडमेंट्स इन अदर प्रोविजंस कि जहाँ पे भी कंफ्यूजन आ सकती है. तो नाउ दे हैव मेंशन्ड कि जहाँ भी 180 डेज में पेमेंट नहीं हुई वहां पे आईटीसी हैज टू बी रिवर्स्ड along with interest under section 50. So there is no effect, substantive effect of this amendment. बस एक you can say procedural amendment ही या एक इफेक्ट देने के लिए थी कि कहीं ड्राफ्टिंग थोड़ी मिस्टेक थी तो उसको गवर्नमेंट ने करेक्ट कर दिया है. नाउ अब इसमें जो थोड़े इंटरेस्टिंग क्वेश्चंस आते हैं. तो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, under which section interest is payable? They have only mentioned under section 50. So my dear friends, recently the government amended section 50 subsection 3 to say that where ITC has been availed and utilized, then in that case interest has to be paid at the rate notified. And section 50 subsection 1, which has been there for day one, that covers output liability. If there is any short payment of output liability, then interest has to be paid. So now we are talking, the provision talks about ITC reversal. So then the provision under which reversal has to be made, interest on that should be under section 50 subsection 3, which talks about interest availed and utilized. So now my question to everyone is, under section 50 subsection 3, what is the rate of interest? 18% or 24%? So I am opening the chat box. I hope the chat box is available to all the audience members. Yes. Okay, so everyone has started responding. काफी knowledgeable audience है आज हमारे पास. So each and every audience member has replied 18%. Not a single person has replied 24%. So this was a very big confusion in the market. अभी भी आज की डेट में कई जगह confusion होती है ये वाली. So as per section 50 subsection 3, the rate of interest is 18% per annum. GST law में अब कहीं भी चाहे आईटीसी रिवर्सल की बात हो चाहे आउटपुट लायबिलिटी की बात हो, rate of 24% is nowhere mentioned. So if in any case any person asks you to pay 24%, then that is not valid. Then next interesting question which comes up is, if ITC has only been availed but not utilized, then whether interest is payable. So in my humble view, since now the interest is, okay, audience has been responding really good. So not duly agreeing with all the audience members. So in my humble view also, since the interest is payable under section 50 subsection 3, which talks about availed and utilized. So in case interest ITC is only availed but not utilized, then there is no need to pay interest. Now we also have a question from Pankaj Shukla ji, whether interest is leviable from 180th day. So Pankaj ji, the way provision has been drafted, तो provision के हिसाब से day one से ही interest आ जाना चाहिए. So अगर 180 days में payment नहीं होती, तो interest applicability comes from the date of availment. But only if the ITC has been utilized. अगर ITC बाद में कभी utilize हुआ है, then interest will come from the date of utilization of that ITC. Okay. Then another major issue in this is the disclosure requirement. Because last year government issued a circular wherein they changed the system of reporting ITC in GSTR 3B. So now, as per that circular, you have whatever ITC is coming in your GSTR 2B, the assessee has to display the total ITC in table 4A5 of 3B, and then whatever reversal is there, that has to be shown in table 4B1 or 4B2. So since so as per that scheme, now how you have to show the reversal? So if any reversal you have to make, so first of all, you have to show the availment in table 4A5, and reversal then has to be shown in table 4B2, which deals with temporary reversal. And when you re-avail the credit, when you make the payment to the supplier, and that re-availment can also be after September or after October of next year. So on that re-availment, that limit of section 16(4) is not applicable. So whenever the assessee makes payment to the supplier and assessee wants to re-avail the ITC, so वो ITC कहाँ पे re-avail होगा? In table 4A5, and that amount also has to be mentioned in table 4D1, which talks about re-availment of ITC. And another very important amendment in this, so recently government department has given a new option on GST portal called ITC reversal and reclaim statement, जहाँ पे हर एसएससी को अपना opening balance डालना है. So very important point to note in that. So if any SSC has made any reversal from 2017 till date due to 180 days payment, so किसी SSC ने 180 days में payment नहीं की and they reverse the ITC in their GST or 3B, so that balance has to be reported in that statement along with other reversals. और कोई भी reclaim होने हैं, so apart from that reclaim, the amount of 180 days reclaim from day one till now also has to be reported in that statement. And that has to be done very carefully, because if the assessee do not report that amount now, then in future if assessee reclaim that amount, then that is going to create issues, because then that statement will go in negative, which will result in notice from the GST department. And another clarification, so this is not related to the amendment, but another clarification in this 180 days provision. So this 180 days rule is not applicable on any ITC which is availed under RCM, any ITC which is availed under Schedule 1. So without payment, without consideration किसी transaction के ऊपर अगर tax लगता है, so that provision is not, this provision is not applicable to that. This provision is not applicable to import of goods. Although import of goods के लिए specifically कहीं mentioned नहीं है, but it is my interpretation that proviso talks about invoice, date from invoice. So import of goods के case में invoice ही applicable नहीं है, invoice ही नहीं होता, सीधा bill of entry होता है, so this provision is not applicable. Then any FOC supplies, so section 15 subsection 2 clause B, जो बात करता है any expenditure incurred by the recipient will be added in supply. So in that case also payment is not required from recipient to the supplier. And lastly, extended credit terms. So let's say the recipient and supplier have a credit term of 365 days. In the agreement itself, they have mentioned that the payment will be made after 365 days. So in that case, in market, both views are there, that one school of thought is ITC reversal करना है, one school of thought is ITC reversal की requirement नहीं है. In my humble opinion, in this case, the ITC reversal is not required, because the language they have used in the proviso is where the recipient fails to pay. Now, जब contract के अंदर ही mentioned है that the amount has to be paid after 360 days, 365 days, or 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, any period longer than 180 days has been mentioned in the agreement itself. And as per that agreement, the recipient has made the payment after 8 months or 9 months, whatever is the period given. So then it cannot be said that the recipient has failed to pay any amount. So moving on to next amendment. So another amendment in third proviso related to this 180 days provision only. So earlier third proviso used to say whenever any payment is made by the recipient, they can re-avail the ITC. Now they have mentioned whenever payment is made by the recipient to the supplier. So after this amendment came, I heard a lot of views in the market कि अब recipient को supplier को ही payment करनी पड़ेगी. So let us take an example. आशुतोष जी I think बुरा नहीं मानेंगे, उनका एक example ले लेता हूँ मैं. So let's say आशुतोष जी ने मुझे एक supply की 180 days हो गए मैंने आशुतोष जी को पेमेंट नहीं की, वो हैं भी बहुत अच्छे, मांगे भी नहीं उन्होंने पेमेंट। सो एंड आफ्टर 180 डेज मैंने उस आईटीसी को रिवर्स कर दिया एज पर सेकंड प्रोवाइजर। फिर और 1 महीने बाद 2 महीने बाद आशुतोष जी से बात हुई, तो आई टोल्ड हिम कि सर नाउ आई हैव द फंड्स, आई कैन पे यू द अमाउंट ऑफ दिस इनवॉइस। एंड आशुतोष जी सेज टू मी कि सर आपको जो इनवॉइस का अमाउंट मुझे देना है, मुझे सेम ही अमाउंट आगे किसी XYZ पार्टी को देना है, तो आप मेरे बिहाफ पे डायरेक्ट उस XYZ पार्टी को पेमेंट कर दो। तो मैं उस XYZ पार्टी को पेमेंट कर दूंगा, एंड इन माय बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स आई विल रिकॉर्ड इट एज अ पेमेंट टू आशुतोष जी, because I have made the payment on behalf of Ashutosh ji. So as per my books of accounts, my account to Ashutosh ji has been settled. So a lot of interpretations are coming that now this is not allowed. Now the payment has to be made to the supplier. So my dear friends, in my humble opinion, that view is not correct, because even if I am making payment, मैंने बैंक अकाउंट से किसी और थर्ड पार्टी को ट्रांसफर किया on behalf of आशुतोष जी, माई पेमेंट हैज बीन मेड टू आशुतोष जी। अब वो बैंक अकाउंट के थ्रू नहीं हुई, वो बुक एडजस्टमेंट्स के थ्रू हुई है। एंड देयर आर लॉट ऑफ जजमेंट्स इन सर्विस टैक्स regime as well as maybe some advance ruling in GST also, which says book adjustment is a valid form of payment. So I can always say that I have paid the amount to Ashutosh ji, not through bank account, through a book adjustment. So in my opinion, this provision, these terms which are added, paid to the supplier, this will not have any effect on the interpretation of this provision. If there is any other interpretation of this, that remains to be seen. Now, coming to the next provision, Schedule 3. So, next amendment is in section 17, but before coming to that amendment, पहले हम Schedule 3 थोड़ा discuss करते हैं. So, in Schedule 3, in year 2019, some additions were made. So, if any goods are supplied from outside India to outside India, so let's say I am a person, Mohit Gupta, India में business कर रहा है, and some goods are sold by Mohit Gupta. Goods US के अंदर रखे हुए हैं और US से goods को UK भेज दिया. So even though sale is done by Mohit Gupta, which is located in India, but goods are physically moved from US to UK. So in that case, that transaction is now outside GST. From 2019, that transaction is outside GST. Similarly, another transaction is of high sea sale. That goods were on the way to India, and when the goods were in seas, high seas, I sold the goods to some other person, and that other person directly filed a bill of entry and cleared the goods. So sale by me to that person is called as high sea sale. That is also outside GST. Then supply of any warehouse goods. So now the goods have come into Indian territory. I filed a bill of entry for warehouse. Those goods are lying in the warehouse. When those goods are in warehouse, then I sell the goods to some other party, and that party files bill of entry for home consumption, and those goods are cleared by that party. So in that case also, though the sale by me to that person is outside GST, and that person, when he clears the goods, he will directly pay the custom duty, IGST, and all the applicable duties, and he will clear the goods. So these transactions are outside GST from 2019. पुराना provision है, no dispute in that. But the problem is के अंदर आई, so this provision was made applicable from 1st February 2019. So dispute came for the period 1st July 17 to 31st January 2019. जो amendment से पहले का period था, department started issuing notices on that portion, on that period to various societies. So उस केस में गवर्नमेंट ने अब रिलीफ दिया है. So now they have given this amendment retrospective effect. So now this amendment will be deemed to be applicable from 1st July 2017, and 1st July 2017 onwards इसके ऊपर कोई टैक्स पे नहीं होगा. But हमारी गवर्नमेंट की बहुत अच्छी आदत है, so कोई भी रिलीफ देते हैं तो कहीं ना कहीं उसके साथ एक छोटी सी कंडीशन जरूर मेंशन कर देते हैं. So now they have mentioned that if any person has already paid tax, किसी पर्सन को लगा कि ये ट्रांजेक्शन टैक्सेबल है एंड उसने ऑलरेडी इसके ऊपर टैक्स पे कर दिया है, then refund will not be allowed, because government says that we want to settle prospective litigation. अगर past में किसी ने tax pay कर दिया, we don't want to re-agitate that issue. But my dear friends, I have a simple question to you. Once any transaction has been made applicable, any amendment has been made applicable retrospectively, and even before this amendment, we have given a lot of opinion to clients that this transaction was not taxable even before this amendment came. So in that case, if any person has paid wrong tax on this, whether the department can keep the ITC, yes or no? What do you think? तो absolutely correct, पारुल जी, अपूर्वा जी. I think पारुल जी तो सबसे first होती है हमेशा सारे आंसर देने में. So friends, as per Article 265 of Constitution, no tax can be levied except by authority of law. So जब तक law कोई tax नहीं लगाता, government cannot keep any amount in the name of tax from the assessee. So in that case, in my humble view, the assessee should will get the refund of that amount. But उस case में, when the tax was paid, what is the limitation period for getting refund? So how all those things will work? So that is a very complicated issue. But in my humble view, refund should be available. Now coming to section 17 subsection 3. तो यहाँ तक हमें क्लियर है कि काफी ट्रांजेक्शन शेड्यूल 3 में पहले भी कुछ ट्रांजेक्शन मेंशन थी, 5-6 ट्रांजेक्शन पहले भी मेंशन थी. Then these 3 transactions were also added, which are outside GST. But now we come to ITC reversal of these transactions. So section 17 subsection 3 used to say that only one transaction in schedule 3, that is sale of land and sale of completed buildings, will be included in value of exempt supply. Other transaction will not be included. So बाकी कोई भी transaction हुई है of schedule 3, that will not be treated as value of that supply will not be included in exempt supply. And उसके ऊपर proportionate ITC reversal under rule 42 and 43 करने की requirement नहीं है. Now they have amended this provision, and apart from sale of land and completed building, now they have also added sale of warehouse goods. So बाकी दोनों चीजें अभी भी ऐड नहीं हुई है. जो बाकी दोनों चीजें थी, high sea sale and merchant trading, goods from outside India to outside India. So those 2 transactions are still not covered under section 17 subsection 3, but sale of warehouse goods has now been covered. Now a very important clarification in this. So there can be 2 different cases. So there is one case when you are availing credit of goods or services which are exclusively used for these transactions. So let's say high sea sale की हम बात करते हैं. High sea sale के लिए you entered into an agreement drafting के लिए आपने किसी advocate को hire किया, या आपने किसी broker को hire किया which arranged the transaction between you and the buyer. So these goods or services are exclusively related to schedule 3 transaction. So इसका credit available है ही नहीं, because that credit is not used to make any taxable supplies. वो कभी भी available नहीं था, अभी भी available नहीं है. There is no doubt in that. But the question comes is common services. तो जितना भी आपका common ITC है, आपके सारे ऑफिस के expenses, ऑफिस का rent, auditor के expenses, consultancy expenses, office के maintenance, all these are common expenses. So whether these common expenses will be treated as common ITC under Rule 42, and whether they are ITC has to be reversed on these common services on the basis of turnover under Rule 42. So now for these common services and common goods, the ITC reversal has to be done only in 2 transactions in Schedule 3, that is sale of land, sale of completed building, and sale of warehouse goods. बाकी किसी भी केस में you do not have to take the value of those transactions to calculate the proportionate reversal. Then another interesting amendment is section 17(5), which is block credit. So another clause has been inserted in this, that is clause FA, which says ITC blocked on CSR activities. So whether ITC is allowed on CSR activities or not, that is a very big litigative issue. All of us are very well aware. A lot of companies are also received notices. So now the government has clarified, amended, not clarified, that going forward, so this is a prospective amendment. So in future, any ITC used in CSR obligation, goods or services used in CSR obligation, ITC is not available. But now then that some interesting question which comes up now is, what about past period? So my dear friends, in my view, since this is a prospective amendment, and so by virtue of being a prospective amendment, जो भी past transaction है, that has to be seen as per earlier provisions. So since पहले कोई ऐसा provision नहीं था which used to restrict CSR obligation goods and services, so उसका ITC available होगा, provided it is not blocked in any other clause. Because जो section 17(5) में बाकी clauses हैं, उसमें भी CSR की general transaction बहुत cover हो जाती हैं. Like if you are giving gifts, if the corporate is giving gifts to someone, that is covered in 17(5)(h). If a company is doing some construction activities for schools, etc., that is covered in section 17(5)(c) and (d). So before this amendment comes, now before up to 30th September 2023, if company has done any CSR activity, so ITC of that transaction is available, provided it is not covered in any other clause of section 17 subsection 5. Now they have mentioned that the ITC is not available if it is used in goods or services are used in CSR obligation under section 135 of Companies Act. Now another interesting question which comes is, if a company is not liable for CSR, so let's say some company is not liable for CSR activity, and company out of their own discretion, out of their own goodwill, they want to do the activity. Or if some company, let's say some company has profit of 1,000 crore, average profit is 1,000 crore, so CSR 2% करना है, so 1,000 crore का 2% is 20 crore rupees, and that company spends 25 crore on CSR activities. So obligation under Companies Act is only for 20 crores. Spend has been made for 25 crores. So क्या additional 5 crores का credit मिल जाएगा? So in my view, yes, credit is eligible because the provision clearly says goods or services used in CSR obligation under Companies Act. So if any amount is spent over and above the obligatory limit, or if the company was not covered for within CSR provisions, then the company is eligible to get ITC. But उसमें फिर काफी interesting question अब आ सकते हैं. So अब 25 crores में से, how will company identify that this IT ये 5 crore is over and above 25, so on this 5 crore I will avail ITC. So let us say out of that 25 crores, some ITC is blocked in some other provisions and some ITC is not blocked. So can the company say कि जो ITC बाकी provisions में भी blocked नहीं है, वो over and above 25 है? या फिर FIFO method लगेगा इसके ऊपर, या किस तरीके से provision implement होगा? That is going to become a very interesting question. Now again, this is a beneficial amendment by the government. So earlier there used to be a dispute. I'll take an example. So let's say there is a company which is engaged in exclusively in exempt supply of goods or services. So let's say there is a shopkeeper which is only dealing in exempt grains, exempt food items, unbranded food items, which is exempt. And that person is not selling anything else. So that person is not required to take registration as per section 23. Now that person gets into some dispute, gets into some commercial dispute with his vendor or his customer, and he engages an advocate. So now as per the provisions, whenever any person is availing any services on which RCM is payable, mandatory registration is applicable under section 24. But section 23 says that registration is not liable to be taken because exclusively exempt supply of goods है. Section 24 says because RCM supplies लिया है तो registration लेना ही पड़ेगा. So there was a contradiction in section 23 and 24, and it was not clear that which provision will prevail over which provision, because दोनों provision independent provisions थे. So my friends, now the government has given a relief, and they have given overriding effect to section 23. So they say if some person is not required to take registration under section 23 and वो person section 24 में भी cover होता है, then also that person is not required to take registration if that person is getting covered under 23. And this amendment has been made retrospectively from 1st July 2017. So very beneficial provision. So in all those cases जहाँ RCM भी था and exclusively exempt supply थी, या और कोई भी case था, so that was just a case study, but a lot of cases were on these lines, which we have seen practically. So now those cases will get relief from the tax department. And what are the cases which are covered in section 23? So any person who is exclusively engaged in exempt supply, any person who is making services, providing goods or services covered in RCM, or in some special notifications were also issued that any person supplying goods or services through ECO up to 12 lakhs in a financial year, which we just covered. Then supply of handicraft goods up to 20 lakhs turnover, and interstate supply of taxable services. So all these notifications have come under section 23. As well as agriculturist is also covered. Then another beneficial amendment by government. So earlier, the time limit for applying revocation of cancellation used to be 30 days. Now it has been extended to 90 days. So a very welcome step from the government. And another benefit they have given, that this 90 days can also be extended by 180 days. So 90 plus 180 days. But this extension has to be given by the assistant commissioner or joint commissioner. So if the assessor is not able to file revocation application within 90 days, then that assessor can go to the AC or JC. They can make their case before him. And if the AC or JC is satisfied that there is a reasonable reason for not applying the revocation within 90 days, then he can further extend the limit for applying revocation. So this amendment has been made in section 30, and corresponding amendments has also been made in rule 23. Then now this is a very, very important amendment. So from last few years, what we were seeing is that in a lot of cases, assessee did not file their returns from 2017, 2018 onwards. And in 2022, 2023, at one go, they used to file returns for 4 years or 5 years. Either tax department gave them a notice, or due to some other reason, they wanted to file returns for all the years. So government wanted to put a restriction on that. So the government has now amended a lot of sections, section 37, 39, 44, 52. And government has said that 4 type of returns. So GSTR 1, GSTR 3B, GSTR 99C, and GSTR 8, which is for e-commerce operator. So these 4 type of returns, now they cannot be filed after 3 years from the due date. So let's say we are in October now. So if we talk about September 2023, September 2023 की GSTR 1 की due date थी 11th October 2023. So September 2023 की GSTR 1 11th October 2026 के बाद सिस्टम फाइल ही आपको नहीं करने देगा. Legally, the assessor is not allowed to file that return anymore. So this is a very important amendment. But another interesting issue which comes is this amendment applicable to retrospective returns also? So let's say now this provision has been notified with effect from 1st October. तो अब किसी पर्सन की लेट्स से जुलाई 2017 से लेके आज तक की सारी रिटर्न्स पेंडिंग है, एंड नाउ दैट पर्सन वांट्स टू फाइल दोस रिटर्न्स टुडे in October 2023. So whether this amendment will also be applicable on that person? So whether this amendment is retrospective, prospective, or retroactive. So there are three type of amendments. So that is not clear as on date. In my view, since it is not mentioned to be retrospective, it should be treated as prospective. But what restrictions are given on GST portal and what interpretation is given by department, that we have to see. And this term of 3 years can be extended by the government by way of a notification. And another practical problem which is going to come. So let's say the registration of some person is cancelled by the department due to any reason. And that person files the revocation application, and that revocation application is not approved within time limit. That takes time. And when the revocation is done, finally done, returns are pending for more than 3 years. Now what will that taxpayer do? Because as per this provision, that taxpayer is not allowed to file returns before 3 years. In that case, that seems to be injustice to that taxpayer. So how will this provision work in that case? That also we will have to see. I think Parulji agrees with me that this provision has to be prospective because no clear view is there. So yes, Parulji, my view is also same. Then another amendment is done in section 54. So section 54 बात करता है provisional refund की. It says that any refund, in case of any refund application, 90% of that refund will be given as provisional refund, excluding the amount of ITC provisionally accepted. So पहले ये line लिखी होती थी. Now the government has deleted this line, excluding the amount of ITC provisionally accepted. So again, like we discussed earlier, पहले section 41, 42, 43 में एक proper GST 123 का matching mechanism था. उसके अंदर प्रोविजनल आईटीसी क्लेम करने का मेथड, फिर फाइनल उसकी मैचिंग, ये सब चीजें मेंशन थी. बट नाउ जीएसटी 2 and 3 हैव बीन डन अवे विद एंड गवर्नमेंट हैज अमेंडेड सेक्शन 42, 43 अर्लियर. सो नाउ दिस इज जस्ट अ कॉन्सिक्वेंशनल अमेंडमेंट. सो आज की डेट में कोई प्रोविजनल आईटीसी एक्सेप्ट करने का ऑप्शन ही नहीं है, कोई प्रोविजनल आईटीसी लेने का मेथड ही नहीं है. तो नाउ दिस सेंटेंस हैव बिकम रिडंडेंट. So now the government has just deleted this sentence. Now this is a important amendment. So section 56 of CGST Act talks about interest on a delayed payment of refund. So if government does not pay you the refund amount within 60 days, then the government has to pay refund. Government has to pay interest on that refund. But 60 days की calculation कैसे होगी? अगर किसी पर्सन ने एप्लीकेशन फाइल की, डेफिशिएंसी मेमो आ गया, फिर उसको दी अप्लाई किया, या शो कॉज नोटिस आ गया, रिजेक्ट कर दिया, अपील फाइल हुई, तो इन ऑल दोस केसेस द कैलकुलेशन ऑफ दिस 60 days becomes very important. So now the government has amended section 56 and has said that what is the mechanism, what is the computation, what is the manner, what is the restriction, all these will be mentioned in CGST rules. तो अब क्या रिस्ट्रिक्शन आएंगी, क्या मैकेनिज्म आएगा, ये सब आज की डेट में क्लियर नहीं है. बट डू यू थिंक दिस इज गोइंग टू बी टैक्स पेयर फ्रेंडली? what is the view of the ऑडियंस को क्या लग रहा है, whether दी जो भी मैकेनिज्म आएगा, कंप्यूटेशन आएगा, whether these are going to be in favor of taxpayer, yes or no? So I think audience also know what kind of rules are about to come, but let's see, because till as on date we don't know what provisions are exactly going to come, but most probably they are not going to be in the favor of the taxpayer. Then ये गवर्नमेंट अगर कहीं कहीं नुकसान करती है तो कहीं कहीं फायदा भी करती है. So another amendment which is in favor of the taxpayer. So best judgment assessment, which is there in section 62. So earlier it used to say that if any best judgment assessment has been made and within 30 days of that order, assessee files the return, best judgment assessment order shall be deemed to be withdrawn. So now that 30 days period has been extended by 60 days and further 60 days. So 60 plus 60, but जो additional 60 days है, so additional 60 days में additional late fees जाएगी 100 rupees per day. So government relief दे देगी, but थोड़ी सी late fees लेने के बाद. But nevertheless, a very beneficial amendment. And recently इस पे amnesty scheme भी आई थी, so which was valid till 31st August. So any person who had against which any best judgment assessment order was paused, in that amnesty scheme, he was given a chance to file the returns and get that order withdrawn. Now, so these sections were section 137 to 148 of Finance Act 2023, which we discussed till now. These provisions will be have been notified from 1st October 2023. The next 6 sections, section 149 to 154 of Finance Act 2023, they have already been notified, which is from August 2023. And these provisions were regarding constitution of GST tribunal. So GST tribunal, like we all are aware, very, very long awaited provision, because a lot of litigation is piling up on high court level as well as commissioner level. So what were those changes? हम उसमें ज़्यादा detail में नहीं जाएंगे, because again that will take up a lot of time. But some important things which we are going to cover later. So some changes have been made in the constitution wide 52nd GST council meeting. So that we are going to cover when we come to 52nd council meeting updates. And government has come out with a notification where they have notified the location of all the benches at first stage which are going to be constituted. So I think some 31 or 51, I don't exactly remember the number, but a lot of benches are being constituted, and maximum benches will be constituted in the state of Uttar Pradesh. I think 3 benches are going to be constituted in UP, then 2 in Haryana, 1 in Delhi, 2 in Maharashtra. I think in every state they are setting up a lot of benches. Then next changes, section 122. So अभी e-commerce operator से related हमने 2 different amendments पढ़ी. That first is the composition taxpayers, they have been allowed to supply through, in case of supplier of goods, they have been allowed to supply goods through e-commerce operator. And second is कि जो small taxpayer है below the threshold limit, they are allowed to make supply through e-commerce operators without getting registered. But now comes the monitoring aspect. कि check कैसे होगा ये सब चीजें. So for that, the government has given responsibility to the e-commerce operator. कि भाई आप ही इनमें सबसे बड़े हो, तो आप ही monitor करो. So in section 122, they have given a penalty that any e-commerce operator, जिसके through any unregistered person makes a supply, but that person was liable to be registered. So then that e-commerce operator is liable. Or if any person who makes an interstate supply, which was not allowed. So allowed कौन नहीं है? Composition. So composition dealer of goods are not allowed to make interstate supply. But if they make interstate supply through e-commerce operator, again e-commerce operator is liable. Or if e-commerce operator does not give proper detail of these persons to the government in their GST rate. In all these cases, e-commerce operator is liable. And what is the amount? The amount is 20,000, 10,000 CDST, 10,000 SDST, or tax amount evaded, whichever is higher. But if any person who is liable to be registered, but who does not declare the same to e-commerce operator, so to what extent e-commerce operator is going to be liable? E-commerce operator कहाँ तक check करेगा कि वो person को liability है registration लेने की या नहीं? That we have to see. Then this is again a welcome step. by government in GST prosecution provisions. So in section 132, it contains 12 offenses in which prosecution can be launched. Jail की जा सकती है taxpayer को. So out of those 12 provisions, clause G, J, and K, 3 clauses have now been removed, which is obstructing or preventing any officer in discharge of duties, tampering of evidence or documents like invoice फाड़ देना, e-way bill छुपा लेना, or failure to supply correct information or furnishing incorrect information. So these 3 offenses have been decriminalized. So first instance में लगता है काफी अच्छी amendment है. But my dear friends, we have to keep in mind that these provisions are also covered in Indian Penal Code. So if any assessee engages in these activities, then the assessee will not be liable under CGST Act, but a case can be filed against that assessee under Indian Penal Code. So that has to be kept in mind by the assessees. But in any case, कोई illegal काम तो कभी करना ही नहीं चाहिए. And another important amendment. So earlier the minimum threshold for prosecution was 1 crore. So that has now been raised to 2 crores by the tax department, except in case of issuance of invoice without supply of goods, जिसको हम दूसरे terms में bogus invoicing भी कहते हैं. तो bogus invoicing के case में threshold limit 1 crore ही रहेगी, but उसके अलावा बाकी जितने भी offenses हैं, or in those offenses, the limit has been increased to 2 crores now. And out of the 12 offenses, there are 4 major offenses. जिनके केस में assessee को without warrant arrest किया जा सकता है, non-bailable arrest above 5 crore. So what are those 4 offenses? Issue of invoice without supply of goods, availing ITC on the basis of those invoices, supply of goods without issuing invoice, and collecting GST but not paying to the government. So in those 4 cases, the tax officer can directly arrest the assessee if the amount of tax evasion is above 5 crore. So tax officer can directly arrest the assessee without any warrant from the court, and that arrest will be non-bailable. The next amendment has been made in section 138, which deal with compounding. So government in all the tax laws as well as other laws, the government has now been giving compounding provisions. But in GST, the government observed that the response of taxpayers in compounding scheme was very less. So now the government has tried to make this scheme more attractive. So the minimum limit of tax payment, which used to be 50%, has now been reduced to 25%, and 150% maximum limit has now been reduced to 100%. And what is the meaning of compounding? Just for a brief discussion, that any person against whom prosecution has been launched, so that person can pay the compounding fee and get the waiver in the prosecution. So instead of going to prison, that person can pay this amount and avoid going to prison. So that is the basic essence of this provision. The next, this is an important amendment. So section 158A was inserted, which said that any information can be shared by GSTN to any other portal, but that information was consent based. So when this amendment came, and later on notification also came in ED law, money laundering law. So at that time there was a lot of concern that now information may be shared with PMLA authorities, with ED, with other authorities, with CBI. So as of now, the government has only notified account aggregators, which are notified by RBI as the person with whom such information can be shared. And most importantly, this is consent-based sharing. So unless and until all the specific person. So whenever GSTN wants to share this information to those portal to account aggregator, the GSTN will ask the assessee whether you allow me to share this information. Only when the assessee says yes, then the GSTN can share these data. So that is the most important thing which has to be kept in mind. So without the consent of the taxpayer, no information can be shared by GSTN to any other authorities. So these were all the amendments in the CGST Act. Now we come to the amendments of IGST Act. So I think maybe we can take a 1-2 minute break here, and meanwhile, if the audience has any question, we can discuss those questions.
यस सर, एक क्वेश्चन आ रहा था अशोक झा जी का. The freezing of the bank account in a year has already come, or it will be retrospective or prospective. What will happen for past cases where it is not defreezed in a year? Please advise.
Very good question, Ashok ji. So this is also an important amendment. So friends, earlier what used to happen is whenever there was any case where department used to feel कि tax recovery नहीं हो पाएगी, the department used to freeze the bank account of that person. And as per the rules, as per section 83 read with relevant rules, that attachment was only valid for 1 year. But after 1 year, the procedure was assessee had to go to the department, get order from the commissioner that this attachment is now void, and then give that order to bank, and then by the bank used to unfreeze that account. Now the government has automated that step. So after 1 year from the attachment order, automatically the attachment will be lifted. But procedurally, yes.
दूसरा क्वेश्चन भी आ रहा था अशोक झा जी की तरफ से. If no registration I taken for RCM payments, how the GST will be paid by unregistered person?
So Ashok ji, if the person is not liable to take registration as per section 23 or section 22 में requirement ही नहीं है या 23 में requirement नहीं है, then that person is not liable to pay tax. That person is not liable to take registration and not liable to pay tax.
एक क्वेश्चन था रचना जैन जी का. Rate of interest is same 18% and not 24% even if the output tax is shortly paid.
Absolutely, रचना जी. 24% का टैक्स रेट कहीं मेंशनड ही नहीं है. अब सिर्फ और सिर्फ 18% का टैक्स रेट एप्लीकेबल है, whether it is ITC रिवर्सल और आउटपुट लायबिलिटी पेमेंट.
एक क्वेश्चन आ रहा था सर दीपक कुमार जी का. In case part payment made in 180 days, is the provision applicable?
Yes, Deepak ji, provision is applicable, but only for the unpaid amount. So let's say किसी पर्सन को आपको 100 रुपीज देने थे एसएससी को, उसने 60 रुपीज पे कर दिए, 40 रुपीज पे नहीं किए, then only the proportionate ITC of that 40 rupees has to be reversed after on 180th day.
ओके, एक लास्ट क्वेश्चन आ रहा था पारुल अग्रवाल जी का. आई गेस द क्वेश्चन इज ऑलरेडी आंसर्ड. इफ नॉट मैंडेटरी CSR एक्टिविटी देन ITC इज अवेलेबल.
I think this was discussed. तो mandatory अगर CSR नहीं है, then ITC is eligible.
I also want the how to calculate the amount if they मतलब 25 करोड़ से, जैसे आपने एग्जांपल लिया था 25 करोड़ उसने एक्सपेंस ऑफ कराए CSR में और ऑब्लिगेशन था 20 करोड़, देन हाउ टू कंप्यूट द 5 करोड़ जिस पे हम ITC अवेल कर सकते हैं.
तो आशुतोष जी, आई थिंक क्योंकि लॉ में कुछ लिखा नहीं है तो हमें रीजनेबल बेसिस ही लेना पड़ेगा. सो अगर लेट्स से एक साल में मल्टीपल पेमेंट्स हुई हैं, then FIFO basis can be one of the ways in which we can say. और अदरवाइज एक बहुत एग्रेसिव व्यू ये है कि FIFO बेसिस भी नहीं लेंगे, एसएससी अपने डिस्क्रिप्शन के हिसाब से डिसाइड कर सकता है.
ओके, एक क्वेश्चन आ रहा था दिग्विजय सिंह जी का. इफ वी कुड नॉट अवेल ITC इन द प्रीवियस क्वार्टर, कैन वी अवेल इन करंट क्वार्टर?
एब्सोल्युटली दिग्विजय जी. सो जो सेक्शन 16 सब सेक्शन 4 लिमिट प्रोवाइड करता है अप टू अक्टूबर ऑफ नेक्स्ट ईयर, तो तब तक आप ITC अवेल कर सकते हैं.
Yes, sir. Now we can continue with the other amendments. All the questions are addressed.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh ji. So friends, now we proceed with the amendments in IGST Act. So IGST Act में first they have made some amendments in the definition. So non-taxable online recipient. So in case of OIDAR services, these both amendments have been made. So OIDAR services given to non-taxable online recipient used to be taxable. So earlier non-taxable online recipient used to mean any government, local authority, governmental authority, or any unregistered individual receiving any personal nature services. So for example, YouTube is a very good example. That if person is subscribing in YouTube, So, or any other OIDAR services, getting any access to any databases, all those kind of services given by a foreign person to Indian consumers or Indian government bodies, that was taxable. So now they have widened the scope. So now they have defined non-taxable on recipient means any unregistered person receiving OIDAR services. So वो पर्सनल यूज के लिए हैं, कमर्शियल यूज के लिए हैं, गवर्नमेंट एंटिटी है, नॉन गवर्नमेंट एंटिटी है, सब कुछ रिलेवेंट है. अगर अनरजिस्टर्ड पर्सन है इंडिया में, then the tax has to be paid. And next, so in online OIDAR services also, earlier there used to be a term essentially automated and involving minimal human intervention. कि जो सर्विसेज प्रोवाइड की जा रही हैं वो मशीन के थ्रू, सिस्टम के थ्रू, क्लाउड के थ्रू प्रोवाइड हो, उसमें ह्यूमन इंटरवेंशन ना हो. जैसे अगर वेबिनार की अगर हम बात करें, तो वेबिनार इज अ ह्यूमन इंटरवेंशनल सर्विसेज, क्योंकि इसमें जब तक हम ह्यूमन सारी बातें नहीं करेंगे, ऑडियंस को कुछ समझ नहीं आएगा. बट कोई ऐसी सर्विसेज है जहाँ आपको विकिपीडिया का एक्सेस मिलता है, सो दैट इज कंप्यूटर बेस्ड सर्विसेज. सो बट दैट यूज्ड टू बी वेरी सब्जेक्टिव. तो गवर्नमेंट ने कहा कि हम दो काम करते हैं, हम इस टर्म को हटा देते हैं. तो एक तो सब्जेक्टिविटी हट जाएगी, लिटिगेशन कम हो जाएगा और स्कोप भी बढ़ जाएगा. तो ह्यूमन इंटरवेंशन हो नहीं हो, एसेंशियली ऑटोमेटेड है नहीं है, in every case that will get covered under OIDAR services. Then that is, now this is a very important amendment in IGST Act. So earlier, when we talk about transportation of goods, so in case of section 12 I'm talking, where the supplier and recipient is located in India. So let's say I'm providing some services to Ashutosh ji. Ashutosh ji is a big exporter, and Ashutosh ji is exporting some goods to US, and he engages me कि मोहित भाई आप goods को transport कर दो outside US. So those services which I am services of transporting goods from India to outside India, place of supply of those services. And let's say I am located in UP, Ashutosh ji is also located in UP, but the place of supply in that case used to be destination of goods. If goods are going outside India, the place of supply used to be destination of goods. So goods US जा रहे हैं, then place of supply will be US. And in that case, the problem which used to come is now I will charge IGST because place of location of supplier is UP, place of supply is outside India. So I will charge IGST. And the problem which used to come at the end of Ashutosh ji is that Ashutosh ji was not able to avail ITC because the place of supply is not in UP. So earlier government used to government came out with a circular saying that ITC is eligible in this case. I think it was circular number 183. So the government mentioned that in this case, the ITC is eligible to Ashutosh ji because there is no provision in GST law which restricts ITC on the basis of place of supply. But now to completely do away with the confusion, the government has now amended this provision. So this amendment initially came out in 2019, 1st February 2019. And now the government has deleted this amendment. So normal provision now. In case of registered person, the place of supply is location of that person, goods kahin bhi jaye. And in case of unregistered person, the location where goods are handed over for their transportation. अब कौन से ट्रांसपोर्टेशन किसको हैंड ओवर हो रहे हैं, ये थोड़ा सा इसमें कंफ्यूजन डे वन से है, बट द प्रोविजन इज व्हाट इट इज. So in registered cases now, the location of registered person is going to be the place of supply. Similarly, they have made an amendment in section 13. So section 13 talks about those cases where the registered supplier or recipient is outside India. So there also there used to be a specific subsection, subsection 9 in section 13, which used to say that place of destination of goods is the place of supply. But now they have deleted that provision. So now that will come under default subsection, that is section 13 subsection 2. So isse effect kya hoga? So let us 2-3 case studies we have mentioned here. So let's say there is a supplier is in India, UP, recipient is also in UP. जो हमने केस अभी डिस्कस किया था, मैंने आशुतोष जी को सर्विसेज दी, गुड्स यूएस में गए. So पहले place of supply used to be US. Now that place of supply is going to be India, and Ashutosh ji will get the credit. So that is a beneficial amendment overall. Now coming to section 13. So let's say now आशुतोष जी का काम काफी अच्छा चला, वो यूएस से शिफ्ट हो गए. So now Ashutosh ji is located in US and he is taking my services. I am Mohit Gupta is located in India and Ashutosh ji is sending goods to India. Goods India में import हो रहे हैं and वो goods import करने के लिए मैंने transportation provide किया. So earlier that used to be taxable because destination of goods which is India. So even though recipient बाहर होता था, the destination of goods is in India. So that transaction used to be taxable. Now that transaction will become non-taxable. So again, beneficial provision. But reverse case can also be there. So supplier is outside India, recipient is in India. So reverse case कर लेते हैं कि आशुतोष जी यूएस में है, मैं इंडिया में हूँ और इस बार आशुतोष जी मुझे सर्विसेज दे रहे हैं फ्रेट की, गुड्स ट्रांसपोर्ट करने की, बट गुड्स इंडिया के बाहर जा रहे हैं. So earlier there used to be no RCM because import of service के लिए 3 condition होती हैं: supplier outside India, recipient in India, place of supply also India. So in that case goods India से बाहर जा रहे थे, place of supply outside India था, import of service नहीं बनता था, no tax. But now in that case, if supplier is outside India, recipient is in India, RCM is going to be there, goods कहीं भी जाएं. And another very interesting case. So this case, actually one client came to us with this case, so हमें भी केस सुन के काफी मजा आया. तो अभी हमने थोड़ी देर पहले डिस्कस किया था कि गुड्स इंडिया के बाहर से इंडिया के बाहर मूव हो रहे हैं, यूएस से ऑस्ट्रेलिया गुड्स मूव हो रहे हैं. तो लेट्स से मोहित गुप्ता ये बिजनेस कर रहा है कि यूएस से गुड्स खरीद के सीधा कनाडा को भेज दिए, लेट्स से, एंड यूएस से कनाडा ट्रांसपोर्ट करने के लिए आई एंगेज सम एक्सवाइजेड पर्सन. मैंने उनको कहा कि आप यूएस से गुड्स कनाडा पहुंचा दो. So in that case, earlier this transaction used to be outside GST because import of service नहीं बनता था. The place of supply used to be outside India, and that transaction used to be non-taxable. I'm talking about the transportation service. Sale of goods is outside GST. That is covered in Schedule 3 and outside GST. No doubt in that. But these transportation service earlier used to be outside GST. Now they will come in GST. Because now the place of supply is location of recipient. Location of recipient is Mohit Gupta, which is located in India. So now this service will become taxable. And I will not be able to avail ITC because my output supply, sale of goods from merchant trading from outside India to outside India, उस transaction के ऊपर tax ही नहीं है. So I will also not be able to avail ITC of that service. So I think that is something unintended, that was not intended to be covered by the government, but unintentionally this transaction has also now come in the purview. Again, a very important amendment. So earlier section 16 of IGST Act used to say कि any supply made to SEZ is zero rated supply. Authorized operations के लिए हो, ऐसी कोई उसके अंदर requirement नहीं थी. That requirement used to be under Rule 89, which talked about refund. कि अगर आपको refund लेना है, at that time it was necessary कि जो भी goods या supply services supply हुई हैं वो authorized operation में use हुई हो और इसके लिए आपको SEZ officer से उसका authorization लाना होगा. Authorization या endorsement on the tax invoice should be there. But if some person is not claiming refund, वो बस SEZ को supply कर रहे हैं without payment of tax, या with payment of tax but refund claim नहीं कर रहे, so in that case कोई problem नहीं होती थी because section 16 में कोई condition नहीं थी. Now the government has amended this provision. So this amendment came in Finance Act 2021, 2 साल पहले. But that has been notified with effect from 1st October 2023 now. So now, even to qualify a zero-rated supply of goods or services, the authorized operation has to be there. अब ये check कैसे होगा? So in case of goods, it is very easy. Whenever any goods go into SEZ territory, the tax invoice is endorsed or signed by the tax officer, SEZ officer. So using that endorsed tax invoice, we can check. But in case of services, how do we check? Because services के लिए कोई endorsement तो होता नहीं है tax officer के specific. So my dear friends, in case of services, there is a list of specified services which are authorized, which are treated as authorized services in case of SEZ. and you can note the notification number. So these services are mentioned in notification number D2/19 dated 2nd January 2018. This notification was issued under SEZ Act, not under GST law. So 66 services are mentioned in this notification. If the services are mentioned in this notification, then those services are treated as authorized operation services, no problem. If any other services there, then the assessee has to get endorsement of the tax officer on its invoices of the services. Then another major amendment in section 16 itself. So earlier there used to be two options: on payment of IGST, without payment of IGST. आप या तो आप IGST पे करके refund claim कर लो या फिर आप without IGST करो, and ITC का refund you can claim if you want. So in 2021, government amended the section and said कि without payment of IGST option तो सबके लिए available है, but on payment of IGST option will be applicable only to a specific person or a specific goods. Now the government has notified this provision and they have issued a notification which says कि कौन से goods के लिए on payment of IGST applicable है, सारे goods के लिए, except some specified goods. तो some specified goods कौन से हैं? Pan masala, tobacco, cigarette, gutka. So all these industry, they have restricted their option to export with payment of tax. So those industries have to go mandatory without payment. And reason, because these industries are considered high tax evasion industries. And with payment of IGST में automatic refund होता है. There is no option with the tax officer to check the refund application. So government has made this change. But अब जब government ने notification issue किया तो थोड़ी सी उसमें problem हो गई. So government only talked about export. Government did not say anything about SEZ operation. So as a result, at present, what is the situation? SEZ operation, अगर कोई भी SEZ को supply कर दे, SEZ unit को, SEZ developer को, so that is allowed only without payment of tax. So that person do not have the option to make those supply on payment of tax and claim refund. So now that change has been suggested by GST Council in 52nd meeting, and shortly we will get the requisite amendment that to SEZ on supply to SEZ unit or developer on payment of IGST option is available, but again subject to these industry. So for these industry, that option is not going to be available for SEZ segment also. So that was all the major amendments which was in the Finance Act. Now we will come to some other amendments which are there wide CGST and IGST Amendment Act, as well as some other amendments which are given in notification or being made applicable on portal. So this is a very important amendment which is not there in rules, but practically government is making it applicable. So any taxpayer whose turnover is more than 5 crore, so now that person has to use 6-digit HSN code in e-invoice and e-waybill. The GST portal is not going to accept 4-digit or 2-digit HSN code. So again, this is a very important amendment, and this is applicable only for B2B supplies. Now we come to the amendment acts. So friends, the major amendment which has been made is in online gaming. So some new definitions have been inserted. Section 2, clause 80A, capital A. So online gaming का क्या मतलब है? Offering any game on internet or any electronic network, and it includes online money gaming. Online money gaming का क्या मतलब है? Online gaming where player pays or deposits any money or money is worth. तो कोई भी गेम खेलते टाइम अगर प्लेयर पैसे पे कर रहा है और मनी इज वर्थ में कुछ और पे कर रहा है, इंक्लूडिंग वर्चुअल डिजिटल एसेट्स. वर्चुअल डिजिटल एसेट्स का क्या मतलब है? For that, they have given the reference to section 2 clause 47A of Income Tax Act, which talks about cryptocurrency. So cryptocurrency को भी इन्होंने कवर कर लिया है in the context of online money gaming. So कोई पर्सन अगर ऑनलाइन गेम खेल रहा है और उसके लिए पैसे पे कर रहा है, सो आइदर करेंसी पे कर रहा है, क्रिप्टो करेंसी पे कर रहा है, बिटकॉइन पे कर रहा है, या और कोई भी मनीज वर्थ आइटम पे कर रहा है, so that will get covered under the term online money gaming. And online money gaming में covered हो गया, then it will get covered in online gaming. तो इससे रिजल्ट क्या होगा तो इसके लिए नेक्स्ट डेफिनेशन पे आते हैं, स्पेसिफाइड एक्शनेबल क्लेम। तो एज वी ऑल नो, शेड्यूल 3 एक्सक्लूड एक्शनेबल क्लेम्स। तो एक्शनेबल क्लेम्स के ऊपर जीएसटी नहीं लगता एक्सेप्ट स्पेसिफिक एक्शनेबल क्लेम्स। तो वो कौन कौन से एक्शनेबल क्लेम है जिनके ऊपर जीएसटी पहले लगता था? दैट वाज बेटिंग, गैम्बलिंग, हॉर्स रेसिंग, बेटिंग, गैम्बलिंग एंड लॉटरी। तो अब उन्होंने उसका एम्बिट बढ़ा दिया है। सो नाउ दे हैव मेंशन्ड बेटिंग, कसिनोज, गैम्बलिंग, हॉर्स रेसिंग, लॉटरी, ऑनलाइन मनी गेमिंग, इनके ऊपर भी जीएसटी पे होगा। तो एसेंशियली अब कसिनोज और ऑनलाइन मनी गेमिंग हैज बीन एडेड। तो अब कोई भी कसिनो या ऑनलाइन मनी गेमिंग है, देन जीएसटी हैज टू बी पेड इन दैट। एंड उसके लिए मनी कैसे भी पे हुआ हो, चाहे कैश में पे हुआ, बैंक से पे हुआ, या वर्चुअल डिजिटल एसेट्स, क्रिप्टो करेंसी के मीडियम से पे हुआ, दैट विल गेट कवर्ड। सो टैक्स तो इनके ऊपर लग जाएगा। किस रेट से लगेगा? 28%। एंड अनदर वेरी important provision, draconian provision, I would say rather, that any person who even organizes the game or organizes the supply, that person will also be treated as a supplier. So let's say there is a person who owns an electronic platform and some other person supplies these gaming services on that platform to the customer. So even that platform will now be treated as supplier. But tax किससे recover करेगी government? Actual supplier से या उस electronic platform से? That is not clear. As of now, they have only mentioned that everyone who is organizing will also be treated as supplier. And what are the other provisions? So when this announcement was made, important thing which was missed out by the government initially was कि जो foreign companies हैं, which are located outside India and giving this gaming services to Indian consumers. So earlier that was missed out. Now the government has realized its mistake and amended the law. So even the companies which are located outside India and they are giving services to Indian consumers, they also have to take registration in India. And if they don't take registration in India, then the government is going to block the access of that website. So अगर उस वेबसाइट ने जीएसटी में रजिस्ट्रेशन नहीं लिया तो इंडिया में उस वेबसाइट को ही ब्लॉक कर दिया जाएगा. And इस केस में, so these are covered under definition of goods. So supply of goods के लिए, as we know, date of payment is not relevant. अगर कोई advance payment भी receive करता है supply of goods के लिए, then GST is not liable to be paid. But in this case, they have given the exception. So in case of these specified actionable claims, even if advance is received, then also GST is liable to be paid. Then these are some procedural amendments. So if any foreign company is going to take registration, they are not required to give their PAN number to get registration. And there is a simplified registration scheme available to them. So they don't have to take registration in each and every state. They can take a single registration on PAN India basis. Now, a very important provision in this is the value. कि कौन सी value पे pay होगा. So the government has tried to simplify this provision by saying कि जो भी initial amount deposit होगा. So if I talk about online gaming, let's say a person goes to a website and deposits some amount to play a game. So that initial deposit or initial payment which is made by that player, that is the value on which GST has to be paid. So let's say there is a person who pays 100 rupees into an account and plays some game, gets 200 rupees out of it. Then he plays for 200, gets 400, pays 400, gets 800, then pays 800, he loses. So wins and loses चलते रहते हैं. So इसमें गवर्नमेंट सेड कि इट इज वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू कीप ट्रैक कौन जीता कौन हारा कितनी कंसिडरेशन माने. तो जो इनिशियल 100 रुपीज हैं विच इज पेड बाय द प्लेयर, दैट विल बी ट्रीटेड एज द वैल्यू ऑफ सप्लाई एंड उस 100 रुपीज के ऊपर 28% जीएसटी पे होगा. Similarly, in case of casinos, whatever amount is paid by the persons to buy the chips and tokens and all those things. तो जो भी इनिशियल कैश काउंटर पे पे होगा टू बाय द चिप्स, टोकन्स एक्सेट्रा, that amount will be considered as value of supply. And इसमें से कोई भी amount अगर refund होता है बाद में, so that amount will not be deducted to determine the value. So उस amount की deduction नहीं मिलेगी. एक बार जो initial amount pay हो गया, उस amount के ऊपर GST pay होगा. And इस case में mandatory tax invoice issue करना होगा irrespective of any amount. इसके लिए स्पेशल जो फॉरेन सप्लायर्स हैं उनके लिए उनको GSTR 5A में इसके रिटर्न फाइल करनी है. एंड नॉर्मल टैक्स पेमेंट के लिए भी स्विफ्ट पेमेंट्स के थ्रू दे विल बी एबल टू पे द अमाउंट. So similar amendments have been made in IGST Act. So since अगर हम foreign companies की बात करेंगे तो उनसे कोई भी person gaming खेलेगा, then it will be treated as import of goods, which is governed by Customs Act. So necessary amendments have been made in IGST Act. Then in some specific cases, import of goods will not be covered by Customs Act, it will be governed by IGST Act. And those specific cases are specified actionable claims. So these are just procedural amendments to make this complete scheme operational. Another very important amendment in IGST Act is insertion of clause 10(1)(ca) of IGST Act. So friends, earlier there used to be a lot of confusion. Let's say there is a person, car dealer, let's say located in Haryana, and a person from Delhi comes, purchases the car from Haryana dealer and takes the car back to Delhi. So in this case, the Haryana dealer who is selling to Delhi-based resident, whether place of supply will be Delhi or Haryana, the tax will go to Haryana or Delhi. So now the government has amended the provision and said that in case of B2C supplies, so we are not talking about B2B, we are only talking about B2C. In case of B2C supply, the place of supply will be if the address of that person is available in the invoice, then that address will be the place of supply. So Delhi wala person, when he comes to Haryana and he gives his address, Delhi address, then place of supply will be Delhi. Otherwise, the location of supply. And this provision overrides 10(1)(a), 10(1)(c). So goods की movement हो रही है, goods की movement नहीं हो रही, goods वहीं पे consume हो गए. In all these cases, the location of recipient which is recorded on the invoice, that will be treated as the place of supply. But another confusion which can come in this is if there is a bill to ship to invoice, if the consumer billing address is different and delivery address is different, then which address has to be seen? So logically, billing address should be taken, but the provision is unclear on that. And this provision has been made applicable from 1st October. So all the manufacturers and traders who are dealing in B2C supplies, they should make corresponding changes in their system and billing and accounting system. Then again, section 14A has been introduced in IGST. This is again related to online money gaming. So simplified registration scheme has been provided to foreign gaming companies to take single registration on pan-India basis. So friends, that was the major amendment in IGST and CDST Amendment Act. Then we have some small amendments. We will cover these through briefly, and then we will discuss the 52nd GST Council changes. So RCM on ocean freight, there was a judgment of Supreme Court in Mohit Minerals, where in CIF cases, RCM was struck down. So now the government has also deleted it from the notification. But in case of FOB imports, RCM is still liable to be paid. So 3 different notifications have been amended to give effect to this change. Then in some industry like high tax evasion industry, which we were discussing earlier, pan masala, tobacco, cigarette and gutka, the government introduced a special scheme of capacity based taxation, that instead of taxable supply based on how many machines you have, so like the system used to be there in excise, so they have brought back that system in DST, that based on your capacity we will tax you. So that provision was supposed to be applicable from 31st July 2023, but now that has been deferred to 1st January 2024. So friends, that was it. That was the major changes which has been made applicable from 1st October. Apart from that, some changes have been made in 52nd GST Council meeting also. So I think एक बार we can also run through those changes and then we can come to the question and answer aspect. So friends, this is a really important amendment. So in a lot of cases, what we saw that a lot of clients did not was not aware of the appeal filing limits. So the normal appeal, which appeal against first order in original has to be filed within 3 months with condonation period of 1 month. But a lot of assessees in initial years was not aware, or the order came on GST portal. The assessee was not aware that they have received any order. So to give relief to all those assessees, the government is coming out with a new amnesty scheme wherein any order against which appeal was not filed or appeal was filed after time limit and the appeal got rejected to this reason that appeal was not filed within time limit. So in all those cases where the order was passed up to March 2023, the appeal can now be filed up to 31st January 2024. So this is a very important amendment. अगर किसी भी क्लाइंट का या आपके किसी भी क्लाइंट का या आपकी कंपनी का अब किसी भी ऑर्डर के अगेंस्ट अपील फाइल होनी रह गई थी, देन दिस इज अ रियली गोल्डन अपॉर्चुनिटी. You find the case history, find all the cases for which order has been passed in last 6-7 years since GST has come, and if you want to file appeal against those orders, then start the appeal drafting process. But थोड़े से इसमें गवर्नमेंट ने कंडीशन एक्स्ट्रा ऐड की है. So normally when you file first appeal, you have to pay pre-deposit of 10%. But in these amnesty scheme, the amount of pre-deposit has been increased to 12.5%. So additional 2.5% pay करना पड़ेगा SSC को. And this 2.5% has to be paid through cash ledger. So this cannot be paid through ITC. So I think this was also a dispute area which has now been made clear by the government. So earlier there used to be a dispute कि जो pre-deposit का amount है, whether that amount can only be paid by cash or ITC can also be used to pay that pre-deposit. So we had some favorable judgment from various high courts that ITC can be used for pre-deposit, but there was no clear rule. But now amnesty scheme में government has clearly given a condition that 2.5% has to be paid by cash. So by implication, it means कि बाकी amount ITC से pay हो सकता है. So that is a welcome step. And since 2.5% minimum cash requirement is there, so in some cases the client may also have to arrange for funds to file the appeals. So the sooner you start the process, the better. Then again, a very important amendment which Manoj ji was also mentioning, that personal guarantee and corporate guarantee. So any personal guarantee which is given by director to a company, in a lot of cases it happens when company has to take a loan and company is new, director is very known in the market, so bank asks for the director to give a personal guarantee to the company. So in those cases, because director is a related party of the company, Schedule 1 used to come into play. Even if the director was not charging any amount from company, Schedule 1 used to come into play, and department used to ask for tax from the company under RCM. That this is a related party transaction, even if the consideration is not there, so it is taxable and covered in RCM. So company, you pay the amount. So now the government will come out with a clarification that if this transaction is done without consideration, then it is going to be outside GST, or rather it will be in GST, but zero value will also be acceptable value. So like the same method they prescribed for cross chart circular, that zero value we will accept as an acceptable value and no GST has to be paid. And if consideration is there, then definitely our tax has to be paid. But whether the tax will come under RCM or forward charge, that is an interesting question. So that was the guarantee provided by director. But next question comes now is, if one company has given guarantee to another company. So in a lot of cases, let's say when subsidiary company is going for a loan, the banks ask for guarantee from the holding company that you are a big company, you give us the guarantee that if subsidiary is not able to pay back the amount, you will pay the amount. And holding company usually accepts those condition and gives the guarantee and do not charge anything from the subsidiary. So in that case, now the government is going to clarify that in that case, GST is payable and the value will be deemed as 1%, even if the ITC is eligible. So again, the logic for this amendment is not very clear, because if complete ITC is eligible, then Rule 28 gives us the benefit that any value can be taken on the invoice that will be deemed as the correct value. So if that benefit is available on all other services, then that should also be applicable to this service. But the government, in all its wisdom, they will come out with the amendment that in this case, that benefit is not available. 1% we are going to deem, and that is the end of it. Now, another interesting issue which comes up in this is how far it actually reflects the current market condition, because we are handling a lot of cases in DGGI Gurgaon. And in a lot of valuation reports, we have seen that the market value of corporate guarantee, sometimes the rate value comes to 0.2%, 0.3%, 0.4%. So in a case where the actual value, the company can get a valuation report and the actual value comes to be less than 1%. So it comes to 0.3% or 0.4%. In that case also, is the department, can the department tax 1% value? So that is a very big question. But rest we will see when we get the legal clarification or legal amendments. So as of now, these are only the recommendation. Legal text, when we see, we will be able to analyze it better. Then I think restoration of provisionally attached property. So that we discussed earlier, that if any property is attached, that will be automatically, attachment will be automatically unfreezed after 1 year. Then another beneficial amendment, in a lot of cases, Indian exporters were receiving consideration in INR Vostro accounts. So there was a lot of confusion whether that will qualify as export of services or not. So government is now going to come out with a circular to clarify whether they will qualify as export of services, even if the money is received in INR. Then the government has also come out with some clarifications regarding services of transportation of goods. Like we discussed that due to amendment in section 12 and 13, there is some confusion regarding place of supply. Then place of supply of advertising services, co-location services, for this also some clarification is expected. Then SEZ unit, like we discussed, on payment of IGST option to SEZ units was not available because of this amendment. So government is going to correct that. Then another very welcome amendment, especially for our advocate brothers. So in tribunal, like we know, there is a judicial member and technical member. So to be appointed as a judicial member, the eligibility condition government has now modified, and any advocate which is having 10-year experience in indirect tax litigation, so central excise, service tax, VAT, High Court, Supreme Court, any advocate having 10-year experience in this will now be eligible to get appointed as a judicial member. But the minimum age should be 50 years. So any person below the age of 50 years cannot be appointed as judicial member. And maximum age is 67 years for members and 70 years for the president. And this is in line with other tribunals also. So even if you see ITAT or any other tribunal, there also we have the similar qualification criteria for the advocates. And another important amendment has been made in ISD. So friends, as the law stands today, ISD provisions are not mandatory. So if a person does not want to distribute the credit through ISD mechanism, they are not required to do so. And the government also came out with circular number 199, where they clarified that for any ITC received in head office, which is pertaining to a lot of branch office, the company can follow either cross-charge model or ISD model. But going forward, the government is proposing to make the ISD mechanism mandatory. So for that, relevant amendments will come in CDST Act as well as the rules. Then there are some amendments in specific rates, so we are not going to take much time into this. So some millet flour falling under HSN 1901. So unpackaged, pre-packaged and labeled 5%, and other than pre-packaged and unlabeled 0%. Then imitation zari thread or yarn made from metallized polyester film attract 5% GST. Then this is an important amendment. The extra neutral alcohol, which is used in manufacturing of alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So that will also be outside GST now. So any extra neutral alcohol used for that particular alcohol only, which is used for human consumption, that will be outside GST. But if the extra neutral alcohol is used for industrial alcohol, then that will remain covered under GST. Then GST rate on molasses has been reduced from 28%, and I think some GST rate change has been there in services also. And there has been one change in bus transportation services. So with effect from 1st January 2022, these services were notified as under section 9(5), meaning the e-commerce operator was liable to pay tax on these. But now the government has modifying this provision. So if any company is making supply through e-commerce operator, then that company can take normal registration and pay the tax. So this is to help the company to get the ITC, because if the tax was paid by e-commerce operator, the company would not be able to avail ITC. And then there are some other small changes related to services. So friends, that is it for today. I hope it was an interesting session.
थैंक यू सर। एक दो क्वेश्चन आए हुए हैं, उनको ले लेते हैं। फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन आया हुआ था दिग्विजय जी का, पहले जो हमने एड्रेस किया था, इफ वी कुड नॉट अवेल द आईटीसी इन द प्रीवियस क्वार्टर, कैन वी अवेल इन द करंट क्वार्टर। उसके बाद उनका क्वेश्चन आया है कि अगर वो उसको नेक्स्ट क्वार्टर में अवेल करते हैं तो 3B रिफ्लेक्टिंग द रेड फ्लैग।
कोई इशू नहीं है दिग्विजय जी। देखिए, अब वो सिस्टम की लिमिटेशन है कि अगर आपने पिछले पीरियड में अवेल नहीं किया, नेक्स्ट पीरियड में अवेल करने पे वो रेड फ्लैग दिखा रहे हैं, बट वो प्रॉब्लम सारे लोग फेस कर रहे हैं। सो आप प्रॉपर उसकी वर्किंग रखिए। इफ टैक्स ऑफिसर कम्स, यू कैन शो देम द वर्किंग्स।
सर कुछ पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं जो पूछ रहे हैं क्या उनको पीपीटी मिलेगी?
बिल्कुल सर, आई विल शेयर द पीपीटी विद द टीम ज्ञान की बात, एंड आई थिंक दे कैन शेयर इट फर्दर विद ऑल द पार्टिसिपेंट्स।
That's it, sir. I would like to thank you. I personally get your session very knowledgeable. Not only the yes sir, अमित सर कुछ कहना चाह रहे हैं? Yes sir.
क्वेश्चन आंसर में दो क्वेश्चन थे अशोक झा जी के। द फ्रीजिंग ऑफ बैंक अकाउंट इन अ ईयर हैज ऑलरेडी come, or it will be retrospective or prospective? What will happen for past cases where it is not freezed in a year? Please advise. Nikatha, if no registration I have taken for RCM payment, how the GST will be paid for registered?
Amit ji, I think these questions were answered earlier only.
Okay.
एक पारुल अग्रवाल जी का मैसेज आया हुआ है। सो सर बेसिकली इफ द डायरेक्टर रेंडर्स एनी सर्विस टू द कंपनी इन हिज पर्सनल कैपेसिटी विदाउट एनी कंसिडरेशन, then such service is not liable to GST. If rendered in the capacity of the director, then it is taxable under RCM, whether with or without consideration. And what if the directors render any services to company in personal capacity with consideration?
I think Parul ji is one of our most enthusiastic audience members today.
Yes, sir.
So thank you, Parul ji, first of all, for your participation and asking such a wonderful question. So friends, director services थोड़ा सा हमेशा से complicated रहा है. I'll try to break it down into a simple structure. So first of all, we have to see whether director is a related party or not. Because director can, there is a possibility director is not a related party, because related party is only employer and employee. If director is an employee, he is a related party. If director is not an employee, then director is not a related party. Then second thing we have to see is whether the director is providing services in the capacity of director or in personal capacity. तो उसका क्या मतलब है? So let's say director is charging meeting fees. The director is coming into a meeting for board of directors and charging fees for that. So that fees is charged by director in the capacity of director. RCM is applicable on that services. But if director has some property on rent and director gives those services, director gives those premises on rent to the company, so that services is not in the capacity of director, because कंपनी वो सर्विस किसी से भी ले सकती थी. वो प्रॉपर्टी लेने की सर्विसेज मैंडेटरी नहीं थी कि वो कंपनी डायरेक्टर से ही ले. So that services are given by director in the capacity of a landlord. So those services are treated as services in personal capacity. So कोई भी personal capacity में अगर director service दे रहे हैं, then that is not taxable under RCM. Director is liable to pay tax under forward charge if director is providing services above threshold. अगर below 20 lakhs है, then there is no tax on that. But above 20 lakhs, then director has to take registration and pay GST. Similarly, if with consider, I think if the director is rendering service in personal capacity, I think Padulji, now it is clear. Or if still any issue is there, you can ask.
Got it, sir.
So I think we have attended all the questions. Soji, anything is left?
No, sir, all the questions are handled by the sir.
Thank you, Mohit for such a beautiful session. You covered all the amendment beautifully and within time, so that we enjoyed. Really, for me, especially, I don't practice in GST, but really I learned a lot. And thank you, Manoj sir, for in his absentia for keynote speaking. Thank you, Ashutosh ji, for
Thank you so
moderating
much,
the
sir.
session. Thank you very much. And thank you, audience, for joining us. और आज बेसिकली सप्तमी है, तो आप सभी लोगों को दुर्गा मी की, नवरात्र की और पूरे त्योहार की ढेर सारी शुभकामना. थैंक यू. नमस्ते.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Kirtiji, are you there? I think we can move with the closure of the session.
Thank you so much, sir. Now we can conclude. All the questions are handled, and now all the participants are also leaving. Thank you so much, sir, for your elaborations. I also learned very much from this session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh ji. And I would like to thank Gyan Ki Baat platform, GST Mishra ji, and most important thank you to all the audience members for taking out their time on a Saturday.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, everyone.